So Justin, where did this racing thing all start?
Well, for me, I grew up in a racing family. Both of my parents were around racing long before I was ever born. My parents sold racing tires, racing parts. Before that, my dad at one point was Mac Toolman, and he was selling toolboxes and tools. And a lot of the toolboxes that he sold were actually here in Charlotte, but we were living in Illinois, or they were living in Illinois. And he was a Mac Toolman in Illinois, but he was selling toolboxes to a lot of the race teams down here in Charlotte. And he was also running a racing wheel company in Georgia. So he was splitting time between the three and really just, putting in the effort to try and have, number one, to be able to afford to live, right? I mean, I think that was the most important piece of it. But number two, just trying to exhaust all options, I guess, if that's the right way to put it. I mean, he was dabbling in a lot of different areas to see what interested him the most. And he'd always been around cars and been a car guy. So, that was kind of a natural extension. So the tire business came from, being at the racetrack and selling parts, and that became kind of a full-time focus. And so whenever I was born, that's really all I knew growing up was they sold racing tires, and I would go to the racetrack every Friday and Saturday night and sit and be part of the races. Or my dad at the time was selling to the ARCA series. So we serviced all the ARCA races for the longest time. So I would walk through the garage with my dad and be a part of that lifestyle. And so for me, racing was always ingrained in my blood. And so my mom was always trying to find stuff to do around home to keep me from wanting to go to the racetrack with my dad, right? Because once you go to the racetrack, you don't ever want to not go. So she took me to see a buddy of mine. His name was Joey Mohan. He was 7, I was 5. So he was old by then. He was racing quarter midgets. And I fell in love with it. I watched these kids that were my age drive around the racetrack, and I just fell in love with it. So my dad called in that night. He was in Michigan, I believe. And he called in and said, hey, how's everything going? What's going on? And I went 1,000,000 miles an hour, telling him all about quarter midget racing and how I wanted to do it. And he said, absolutely not. No chance. No way. And we argued for about 20 minutes. And finally I had the trump card. I said, but Mom said. And that was kind of it. That was when all this started. We practiced my buddy Joey's car for a little bit, for a couple weeks, and then we actually ended up splitting his car. So he would run the senior class and I would run the junior class every week for the rest of the year. And that got a little bit tiresome. They were changing all kinds of stuff between races. I couldn't really see over the body work too well, but ultimately that Christmas I got my first race car, and I've been lucky enough to be a part of the racing scene ever since. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. Obviously there's been a lot of ups and downs, and there's a lot of times where I wish, maybe I had done something a little bit different, but for the most part, I love this sport and I love what it embodies in every part of it.
So I know you were in ARCA, I think in '08 with the championship there. But I kind of want to go to your first season. What was it? 2010 you were with Penske and all that.
2009.
So how did that get put together?
Yeah, so in 2008 we were in the ARCA series. I had an opportunity to potentially go to an Xfinity program back then. Used to be CJM Racing. They were trying to figure out what they were going to do for 2009. So I had an offer on the table to go drive their race car, and I had done some tests with them or through them. Wasn't in an Xfinity car, but we had done some tests and just trying to see if that was going to be a good fit. And to be honest with you, it really was going to be the direction I was going. I had already kind of made up my mind that that's what I was going to do. And my dad had already come to me and told me that we weren't going to be able to go to the ARCA series anymore. We were out of money. We had spent every dime we could spend, and we had some sponsorship stuff that kind of fell through. So, we were basically at the end of the road of my racing career. And so, even though it was the only option, it was still a good option. They at the time they were running really good, and Jason Kelly was driving the car, and they were having some success. And so, I think that it was just interesting timing, because I met a gentleman in Pocono at the ARCA race on my way to driver inductions. And it was kind of a last minute. A friend of a friend introduced me to this gentleman, and I had to cut the meeting short because I literally walked up to driver intros, or ran up to driver intros and walked across the stage without even stopping. I literally ran up there and ran right across the stage. I was almost late to driver intros, which would have put me starting at the back. Well, anyways, long story short, I went on to win the race, and I got a phone call that said, "Hey, can you come have lunch at the shop next week?" So I didn't know if they knew that I lived in Illinois or not at the time, but it didn't matter. I literally emptied my bank account to be able to buy a plane ticket and fly to Charlotte, and came to Charlotte, got here, had a conversation through lunch, and when it was all said and done, they basically told me, "Hey, we don't have anything for you, but we just wanted to get to know you a little bit better. It seemed like a good guy, and just get to know you a little bit better and see if there's an opportunity that would ever make sense for you to be a part of our program. But at this time, we don't have anything." So obviously, in the moment, I left that meeting pretty dejected and pretty disappointed. Well, about 2 weeks later, I got a phone call saying, "Hey, Mr. Penske would like to meet you. Would you be willing to stick around in Chicagoland after your race is over and meet Mr. Penske?" And of course, when you look at the captain, right, there's never a moment in your life where you wouldn't turn that opportunity down. Whether you were going to go drive for him or not, you still, I urge people all the time. I said, if you can ever meet Roger Penske, just an absolutely incredible person. Truly one of the most incredible people I've ever been, fortunate enough to be around. And so my biggest challenge was the Friday of Chicagoland. I was supposed to sign my contract with CJM, and I had a deadline of that Friday before I was supposed to meet Roger, and that was on Sunday. So I called and I said, "Listen," I said, I need a couple more days, and there was a lot of pushback, obviously, from that front. But they agreed, and so I went. I met Roger, and it was a great conversation. And I told him, I said, I don't know where this is going, and I don't want to ever affect an opportunity to maybe come drive here. But here's what opportunity I do have, and I was supposed to sign this on Friday. I've obviously held off, but you need to understand that we're broke, and I need something to drive as a race car. So for me, this is the best opportunity that I can possibly do. And if I don't take this opportunity, it could be potentially the end of my racing career. And he said, "All right, give me 24 hours." And Monday morning at 5 a.m., there was a plane sitting in Springfield, Illinois. They picked me up. I flew to Detroit to Rogers Hangar, and we basically laid out what was eventually going to be my contract. And he offered me a job right there on the spot. And I was going to be a test driver. I wasn't even going to be a driver for their program. I was just going to be a test driver, and kind of learn the ins and outs of what we needed to on the developmental side. And obviously the rest is history. Things transitioned a lot quicker than what we ever expected them to, because at the time, Alltel got bought out by Verizon. They had to make a brand switch. They couldn't obviously put their name on the Sprint Cup Series at the time, and so I got tabbed in as being the driver, and so it was quite the experience for sure.
Yeah. So it almost feels like betting on yourself a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting part was I felt like at the time I had the talent, right? I mean, I felt like there was a talent that needed to be worked on. There was a lot of unknowns on my front.
Yeah.
Even to this day, I look back on it and I wish the developmental programs had been what they are now. I wish there would have been a more of a teaching moment in those days. I feel like when we started that process, it was just jump in, go do it, and it was sink or swim. And my first race at Charlotte in 2008. So I ran the final four. Or I ran 4 of the last 5, I think, in 2008.
Yeah.
And there was 63 cars, I think, that attempted to qualify for my very first race. and 29 of the 43 starters that started the race were all Cup guys, right? I mean, you had Jimmy Johnson, Kevin Harvick, Jeff Burton, Clint Boyer, Kyle Busch. You had all the guys that you don't want to see on the entry list in the race with us. And so, it was just different. It was a different time. It was really sink or swim, very cutthroat. There was a lot of moving parts going on within NASCAR. There was a lot of guys that were in the same situation I was in that needed the opportunity to go well. And I've been blessed in this sport. There's no question that there are more talented race car drivers that have came and gone and not had the opportunities that they deserve because of something, right? I just feel like, I put my trust in what was going to happen as God's plan and did everything I knew how to do, and admittedly sometimes doing it wrong, right? I mean, that was just how it went sometimes. And ultimately it's played out well. I mean, would I love to be a Cup champion by now? Absolutely. But I look at my career and if my career ended right now today, I wouldn't regret anything that I've ever done or any opportunity that I've ever had. I don't regret any of them. They're all learning experiences and they've made me a better person to this day from where we started. So I can't complain.
So after Penske, you went to, I think, the Turner Motorsports team, and I think that is where you met the Brandt people, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so this kind of all transpired very similar times. So 2010 Gateway, which would have been at the time my home racetrack, right? So Gateway is only about 80 miles from my house.
Yeah.
So went to Gateway. The Brandts were there. They were actually partnering on a car that weekend for their first NASCAR race ever. And so I had a conversation with Rick Brandt, a very short conversation. He was actually in Australia whenever I talked to him. Kind of a funny story of how that all kind of transpired. But I talked to Rick Brandt. He told me he was going to be at Gateway. We agreed to go have breakfast the next morning when we got to Gateway. So Sunday morning, which would have actually have been, I guess yesterday would have been 10 years to the day yesterday of when I first met them. And so we went and had breakfast and he said, look, he goes, I don't know if this is something I'm in for or not. He said, I really don't know much in the way of, what it costs or what it can do for my business, but, I'm definitely interested. And he's like, I can't think of a better way to do something than with, a hometown guy. I mean, literally we grew up kind of on the opposite sides of town. But the nucleus was Springfield, Illinois, and we were both from that area. And he said, if we could ever make something work, this would be really cool. So, I said, okay, well, let's plan on you coming to Charlotte. We'll go around. We'll talk to some race teams, show you around shops and just see what transpires, right? What opportunities are available, what's going to happen. So you jump forward a couple of weeks, and at the time, I believe Talladega used to be on Halloween weekend, right? So this would have been next weekend's race. I went down to Talladega because the Xfinity cars didn't run on there. So I went down to Talladega just to hang out, talk to potential car owners, see what opportunities were available. I knew I wasn't going to be back at Penske Racing. And so I talked to Steve Turner for a long time, and he said, listen, I got an opportunity for you. I don't know if you'll like it or not, but he said, listen, I'll hire you to drive something. I can't tell you what it's going to be. It could be an ARCA car. It could be a Cup car. It could be a truck. It could be an Xfinity car. I don't know. But I'll hire you to drive something, and you'll be in a race car in 2011 if you're interested. He said, but if you can find a half a season's worth of sponsorship to run the Xfinity series, I'll put you in a car. We'll figure out how to make it work. We'll figure out sponsorship. We'll figure something out if you can find a way to do half a season. And so I called Rick Brandt that afternoon. It was the afternoon of the truck race, and I said, hey, listen, I know you were going to come to Charlotte. I know that this was going to be, you know, an opportunity for you to meet people, but I said, I got an opportunity I can't turn down, and I'm going to take it. And he said, well, sounds like I need to meet this Mr. Turner guy. Right. So we jumped on a conference call on Sunday. I was in my rental car right behind the start finish line in the infield on a conference call when they took the green flag for the cup race on Sunday. And 8 a.m. the next morning, Mr. Turner picked up Rick Brandt, Springfield, Illinois. They flew to Charlotte, and the rest is history. And you know, that started a relationship that who would have ever thought 10 years later that I'd still have a great relationship like I have with Brandt Professional Agriculture and the Brandt family. I mean, just truly incredible how things transpire in those moments. And you know, again, the opportunities that I've been afforded by people that really will never know what those moments meant, short term or long term, right? I mean, Mr. Turner is no longer with us, but you know, I look back on those days and I go, man, you know, you can't say thank you enough, right? Especially when somebody's gone and you don't have that opportunity to say thank you enough. But you can't ever say thank you enough to people, and I think those are what this is really all about.
Yeah. So you were I think you were with Turner from 2011 and 2012. You went cup racing, I think, in 13.
That sounds about right. 13, 14 or 14. No, 14, 15. I was there 2011, 2012, 2013 at Turner Scott Motorsports.
Okay.
And then
so how the cup thing want to go? Did you feel like you were ready to go to the Cup Series in 14?
Yes, I felt like I was ready. Would I have probably hoped that things would have been a little different? Yes. You know, there were some challenges. I mean, there was a lot of things that were potentials when the Cup Series program started at H. Scott Motorsports, a lot of which never came to fruition. And that was the hard part is you're banking on, you know, a lot of people holding true to their word, right? And there were a lot that did, but there were some that didn't. And the some that didn't really affected the ones that did, right? And I think that that's probably what made my Cup career as interesting as it was, right? I mean, you know, very unique time. You know, I don't think I really understood the gravity of where we were at as a program until after I was gone and I watched Clint get behind the wheel. And I realized really quickly, you know, kind of what was transpiring and what had happened and, you know, what didn't happen, I should say, I guess, what resources we just didn't have. And so, you know, when I had the opportunity to come back to the Xfinity Series and be with a great team like Junior Motorsports, it was like, whew, okay, I can breathe again. You know, I feel like I can go to the racetrack and have success and be comfortable and be happy. That was a very difficult time of my career, right? I love the Cup Series. And don't get me wrong, if I had the opportunity to go back and be competitive, I would jump on it in a moment because I think that it's an incredible series and really a lot of fun. But the way we did it just wasn't ideal.
Did you hate race? Did you feel, at that time, did you feel miserable?
Oh, more than miserable. Yeah, like I spent a lot of times reflecting on why I even chose to be a race car driver, to be perfectly honest with you. And it's hard too because, you know, in the moment, you're hoping things get better, right? And that was always the plan, was things would get better. We would get better equipment, better opportunities. You know, things would happen. We had good people. We had great people. That was probably the part that was the most frustrating is we had so many people that had untapped potential because we just didn't have the stuff we needed to be able to use their knowledge. And, you know, you got to be upbeat, right? You're trying to sell sponsorship. Obviously the Brandts were involved and I had a great personal relationship with everybody at Brandt Professional Agriculture. So you don't want to be too down because you don't want them to feel like they're wasting their money, because at the time they weren't wasting their money, right? We were using it for other things, and it was still doing a lot of the things that we needed it to do from a hospitality and from a marketing standpoint. And that may be the hardest part. Sometimes in the sport, there's different agendas, right? And I think a lot of our fans don't necessarily always understand that. There's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes, whether it be business to business, or entertaining customers or potential customers, or the TV aspect of it. The publicity that we're getting on TV, the appearances that we do. Connecting with our fans. There's so many pieces of the puzzle that I don't feel like a lot of other sports have, right? Other sports might have personal endorsement deals as players. Stickball sports, they might have a shoe deal or a drink sponsorship or whatever. But when they go out on the field or out on the court, they're under the brand of whatever team they play for. They're not under a sponsor's brand. They're not under a it's just a different style of how you carry yourself and how you interact with people. And so for me, I internally, like physically, mentally, I was just obliterated. I didn't want to get out of bed in the morning, right? I'd spend all week trying to just get myself to get out of bed. And it was difficult too, because at the time, my wife and I were having everything go the way that we wanted it to. We had just had a kid, like our marriage was in a great place. And then all this kind of happened, and it was just like, oh man, I'm deflated, right? Like, I don't want her to think that I'm disappointed in our relationship. I don't want her to think that, I don't want my daughter to think that I'm not happy with where we're at as a family. Like, all of that outside the racetrack was 20 out of 10. It couldn't have been any better. But every morning I'd wake up and I would just have this hole in my stomach. Like, I didn't want to be going to the racetrack and didn't want to be doing what I was doing. So it got really difficult. And, that was when I had the opportunity to do something different. I debated very heavily to just walk away from the sport. And, when the opportunity came to come to Junior Motorsports, it was a no-brainer, right? I mean, a team that I had looked up to, a car owner or owners that I looked up to all of them. And, it was just a good opportunity, a good fit, and really changed who I became as a person, for a good reason.
So the story is that, did you the back of a pickup truck at driver intro? When did the Junior Motorsports thing kind of transpire? When did you first talk to Dale about possibly going over there?
Yeah, so it was Darlington. We were riding in the back of the pickup truck together, and it was funny because I always told the guys, I said, can y'all stop qualifying next to me? Because you go across the driver intro stage and, you'd either go right before or right after Dale Jr., right? If you qualify next to each other. And very rarely did we qualify next to each other. But if you ever did have to walk across the stage right before, right after, it was always the world's worst, because Dale got more cheers than all the other drivers combined, right? I mean, literally everybody in the Grand Stand was cheering when Dale Jr. walked across stage. So if you were right before him, it was radio silent. If you were right after him, it was radio silent. Like, it just, nobody would cheer, right? Compared to even if 10,000 people were cheering, it still sounded terrible compared to what Dale Jr. just had when everybody and their brother was cheering. So I always joked with him about that. But we're riding around the truck, and he apologized to me. He had heard the news just same as everybody else that I wasn't going to be coming back to H. Scott Motorsports next year. And he told me that that they were trying to figure out what they were going to do for the next year, and they were having some challenges in that department as well. And they didn't know what the future looked like. And so we just had this short conversation, and it was funny how things aligned, right? I mean, just the conversation that I had already had with the Brants and kind of where they were at and what they were wanting to do with their program moving forward, and where I was at, and then what they was trying to figure out on their end. It literally couldn't have been a better fit kind of collectively as a whole. And still to this day, I mean, it still is an incredible fit. I mean, family owned companies on both sides, right? A lot of the same thought process and business ideas. And it just really worked out well that I was able to come here to Junior Motorsports and be a part of this program and bring them along with me, right? I mean, they've obviously had a great relationship here at Junior Motorsports and love the fact that we're able to do what we do on a weekly basis.
Yeah, I mean, so you've been this is your 5th year with Junior Motorsports. What is being with this team coming from not the best experience in the Cup Series? What have the last 5 years done for you, just as a driver, as a person, and how has it, just affected you as you try to navigate through all your racing career?
Yeah, it's interesting because, this is a very unique race team, right? Because it's extremely large, right? I mean, we have 4 cars. By all intents and purposes, it's a big race team. But when you look at the way we run our shop and you look at the people, it's big in size, but not necessarily in number, if that makes sense, right? We run on a pretty limited amount of people. We have obviously enough people to do what we do, but I would say it's as small of a group as you can have to run, an organization of this size. But the reason that is because it's just good people. We have a really tight-knit group of employees here at Junior Motorsports that really put in more work than I think anybody will ever realize, right? The behind the scenes, the making sure that our cars are as fast as they can be. And so, for me personally, this was a great opportunity to come back to, number one, be competitive, right? I mean, I think that's first and foremost, to go to the racetrack every week and be successful. It also allowed me to be around a lot of really good people that have passion for the sport and they love what they do. And I think from a driver standpoint, that's all you can ever ask for, right? You want to go to the racetrack and know that you got people that are at 110%. They're pumped up, they're excited, they're ready to go win races. And I don't care what of the 4 cars guys work on here in this shop. We load up these haulers each and every week with the idea that one of the 4 of us is going to go win the race. And we push that way. And when one of us does, the other 3 are right there, high fives, congratulations, helping. But also on the flip side of that, when one has a bad day, the other 3 are right there to be supportive and kind of push through that and to be a part of it. And I think that for me is what this sport is really all about, is the cohesiveness of everybody together. And this team does a great job of that.
Yeah, and I think, that perfect example, I kind of saw that this weekend with Noah. When Harrison went by him, I saw that you were there. Michael Annette was there. I'm not sure if Jeb went over there as well, but yeah, I saw all you guys were over there. So, the biggest thing, your racing career has been. What would you describe your racing career as? Do you feel like, and this is more like, as everyone has challenges and struggles throughout their life, do you feel like have you had to bet on yourself a lot as your career goes on?
Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting career, right? Because there's been a lot of things that have been good. There's been a lot of bad. I think when you're in the moment, you don't realize how much you're betting on yourself, right? Until it's kind of over. I don't know. I look at this sport and it's a extremely humbling sport, right? There's no question that it's extremely humbling sport. But, I could walk away right now and be perfectly satisfied. Like I said earlier, I could be done and be perfectly satisfied. But I don't want that, right? Like I want to win races. I want to win championships. You know, every one of the wins that I've had in my career have a good story behind them, right? They've all, very rarely do you have the fastest car all day and win the race, right? And unfortunately, I'm learning that harder and harder as we go. You know, here, especially here lately, we've had extremely fast race cars and not been able to do anything with them. But you know, I think when you're in the moment, you don't realize how much you're putting pressure on yourself, how much you're putting pressure on the people around you. You know, you're just focusing in on the task at hand, and that's it's been interesting to say the least. But I've been very lucky that things have worked out the way that they have, and the opportunities have been where they've been, and you know, I never ever would have thought they would have gotten to here and pumped on the way that it has been.
So you're 34 years old, right?
Yep.
How long do you want to keep doing this?
That's actually a good question.
That's why I asked it.
You know, realistically, I said when this all started that I would say 40 was my number, right? At 40, I was going to be done, and there was no questioning that. That was a hard number, and 40 was it. You know, as you get older, ages don't seem as big of a deal when you get to them, right? So, you know, 30 was the big deal, and I got to 30 and I'm like, yeah, so what? No big deal. You know, I'll be 35 next year, and so what? It's no big deal, right? Like I still feel young. I still feel like I'm having a lot of fun. You know, my biggest challenge right now is my daughter. As she gets older and she's into more and more things. Obviously 2020 has been terrible for being into extracurricular activities because of COVID. But you know, as she's into more and more things, you know, there's times that I'm disappointed that I'm missing those things with her. But one of the coolest things for me is her coming to me and you know, she'll be excited to tell me something that she's accomplished or whatever. And she'll say, you know, I'll tell her, I'm sorry I missed it, you know, and she'll say, it's okay. You know, you were doing what you do because you need to do that to be able to take care of mommy and I, you know. And it's like, it's cool to see her perspective on, you know, why I'm gone a lot and why I'm at the racetrack. So, you know, as long as I'm capable of driving a race car and can do it competitively, I think that's the most important piece. Is as long as I can do it competitively, I'm in for the long haul. We'll see what happens. You know, I can't tell you when the next or when the last lap's going to happen, but I think when it gets to that point, I'll know. And I think you guys will all know probably as quickly as I know when that last lap is made, and it will be for good reason whenever I quit.
Yeah. So I know you were talking about like missing big moments. Like for example, she lost her first tooth today.
Yeah.
So you know, I know that's, you know, many people, it's like, oh, you just lost your first tooth. That's a big deal for a lot of people. You know, I mean,
it was a big deal for my daughter. It's been loose now for a couple of days, and it was actually loose from before I left to go to Texas. And so my wife was worried to death that it was going to come out over the weekend and I was going to be gone, not be able to be there and you know, help her with it and be a part of that moment. And luckily it didn't, right? And this morning I was in the shower. My wife come running in the bathroom. She's like, you need to hurry up and get out of the shower. I think her tooth's coming out. I need you out here. And so I hurried up, got out of the shower, went out, and sure enough, it was completely loose. But what was really neat to me was, you know, we spent a lot of time on Thursday, a lot of time on Friday in tears over the potential of this tooth coming out, right? She was scared to death. She didn't know what it would feel like. She didn't want it to hurt, obviously. And it's hard to explain to a child that, hey, it's not going to hurt, right? It's natural. It falls out. It's no big deal. And so we had some tears, we had some laughs. We discussed the string to a door trick. She didn't like that idea nearly as much as I thought it was a good idea. And so, I didn't really know how this was going to go. And so this morning when she got it loose, she got a paper towel and she was brave enough to pull it out on her own. And probably one of my more proud dad moments, right? Watching her do that, not being scared, no tears, just grabbing onto the tooth, pulling it out. And then to watch her hold it in her hand and just look at that tooth, it was really cool to see. I don't know. I felt like there was a big breakthrough for her in that moment, and it was cool to watch as a dad, and really cool to kind of see how it all transpired. So pretty impressed with my daughter, that's for sure.
How old is she?
She's 7, which is kind of funny because all of her friends have lost multiple teeth by now.
Yeah.
And we go to the dentist, and Harper's first question always at the dentist office is, when am I going to lose a tooth, right? I want to lose a tooth. All my friends have lost teeth. And the dentist is always like, hey, listen, when it's meant to come out, it'll come out, right? We don't want to force it. We don't want to push it. Like, don't be pulling on your teeth and wiggling on them. When it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And so she was pretty bummed that she's not lost a tooth until now. So to be able to lose the first tooth, I'm sure they're going to come in droves after this first one. It's going to be one after the other, but she's pretty excited that she lost that first one.
And and getting ready, might as well ask you, just get a question ready for this weekend in Martinsville. A lot on the line, going possibly for a championship. Big deal. What's it going to be like heading over there?
Well, I think it's going to be difficult. You're going into a racetrack that a lot of us have been to, but obviously never in an Xfinity Series car. You're tasking a team with coming up with a setup for a racetrack that is unique, right? It's hard enough when you've got 2 or 3 hours of practice to make a car go around Martinsville alone, setting it up in the shop and hoping that you hit the balance right. We're going to be taking the green with some guys that have never been around there. So, who makes a mistake, who misses a corner, who gets crashed. I mean, in all reality, if we were to get crashed early, there's a good chance we won't make it to the final round at Phoenix, and that will be extremely disappointing. So, there's a lot on the line, not only for us, but for all the competitors for the Xfinity Series playoffs. But you also have to look at the guys that aren't in the playoffs. There's a lot of guys that there's a big opportunity for them. We're getting out of the end of 2020. You guys are looking for rides for next year. Guys are trying to make their mark in the series. There's a lot on the line, and I think that you're going to have to be careful and not do anything crazy, and just get the points you can get this playoff points or the stage points that you can get those race ending points that you can get, and hope that it all goes well. We had a great car at Richmond, right? So the last short track we went to had a really, really fast race car. I'm excited about getting Martinsville, that's for sure.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, man. Thank you.